Welcome to Municipals or Foes. At the crossroads of seriousness and silliness, a look at small town politics in rural Oklahoma. We're just two city council members discussing if your municipality is really your friend or your foe. I'm Mike Simulescu with my co host Lauren Fuller, and welcome to the show today. How are you today, Lauren?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Mike, because we are coming off a little victory this week. We had city council candidacy paperwork turned in, and it turns out that both Humphrey and I, neither one drew an opponent. And so we are automatically in.
That's really exciting. I think everybody's a little bit relieved. You don't have to go through a campaign again. You guys just went through well, you personally went through a campaign 2 years ago. I think maybe some people don't know kind of how you ended up having a campaign so quickly. If you can just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, there were 4 seats open in our city council out of the 5, which is crazy. 3 were up for reelection, and 1 council member stepped down midterm from their position, and that opened up the seat in my district. So I ran for that seat, but because it was an interrupted term, I had to rerun 2 years later when that seat did legitimately come back up for reelection. So thankfully, it seems as though the community has been supportive of what we've been doing, and they like the direction that we're taking the city. And so for that reason, nobody ran against us. They are going to let us keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I think if you remember last time when we ran the first go around, it was pretty noisy when you get to the point of the filing deadlines, and really not really any peep almost at all in social media or in the community. Very little discussion about hey, is anybody running? Is anybody interested? I know some of us were wondering to see if there was anybody that was going to come in and challenge you or Humphrey, but obviously that did not pan out. So, definitely a different climate right now than we had 2 years ago. Much more noisy and emotional, I felt like, than this time around. So I think we take that as a win and as hopefully as a vote in the direction that we're going in the right direction based where we were before.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm excited about it. So we get to keep plugging along, doing what we're doing. And thankfully, nobody listening to this podcast is mad at me yet.
Right.
So there's
gives
that.
gives you 4 more years to get mad at her. I think that's part. At least you get 4 more years. So congratulations. Also to Humphrey Miller, he can't be on the show because of laws. If you have more than 2 on a council, members on a program or show or anywhere, it's technically a quorum. So we're not supposed to be having that. So, but we do congratulate him. He has been a good partner as we've moved forward, working with us since we did get elected 2 years ago. He's really been helpful. Brings unique perspectives to our discussions and to the constituencies that he represents. And I think with choosing city manager and the new direction, he's been in the forefront of that as well. So we do appreciate him and hope that we continue to work together with him as well.
But Mike, speaking of all this online chatter that we faced through campaigning 2 years ago, a lot of it has continued over the last 2 years of a handful of people that want to cause dissension and want to play that devil's advocate, right? And so we have cherry picked a few comments from the last year of some local people who have had some very strong opinions that we wanted to address today. So what's our first one, Mike?
So the first one, I think, kind of goes along with this sort of election or not election. I guess we're not having an election because there was no challengers. Was when certain people talk about that, and I'll just quote some of it or paraphrase it. Make no mistake that Durant is in serious trouble. We have a new council with 3 new members that formed a pact and disenfranchised citizens in Ward 1 and 3. We'll get talked about that a little bit in more detail. And then we have practically given the Choctaw Nation the keys to our city, and we have so many fragmented groups struggling for power and control. Interesting. Those are some strong words, right? And this was in 23, so it's been a little while toward the middle of 23. So some of that was after our election, but I think it's important to go back and visit those comments because I think some of it's just nonsense. Other of it is, sour grapes, I think. And then the other part is just, politics, I guess. But, I think if we just dissect those three quotes, you can't really disenfranchise people, right? It's a representative form of government. So the people elect representatives and they carry out the vote as councilmen, right? And women, sorry, council people. Sorry. But and that's the thing. We didn't disenfranchise anybody because as far as, most people may not know this, but the whole city votes for each ward. So we represent our wards, but we also represent the whole city. So it was the whole city that chose this direction. It wasn't just a few people.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, the people I talk to aren't typically in my ward. Yes, am I supposed to specifically represent my ward? Of course. But does that mean I'm not taking calls or talking to people outside of my ward? Absolutely not. We do. We represent our entire city, and we all have very different circles and friend groups that we are included in that don't really have a lot of overlap, which I think is really cool because we all hear very different perspectives throughout the city. And so what I've noticed is sometimes people get really bent out of shape when it's just not their way, right? Like they're not getting the answer they want to hear. And
Sure.
So does it make it a bad decision? No, like we're always open to sit and talk about all of the options and why we have ended up with that decision. But sometimes people are just angry that it's not their decision, but that doesn't mean they're not represented at all. That's not the case.
Right. No, I think you're right about that. And I think a lot of times, when people do come up with concerns and complaints, some stuff is just, maybe a not understanding or wanting to be heard, right? A lot of times we run into this where, so-and-so hasn't heard what I wanted to say, or they don't have a good feedback from whoever in the government at the city or whatever level it is. And then, they feel like, hey, well, if I talk to council, maybe they can help. And a lot of times we do reach out and clarify things and put people in the right direction. Sometimes you can't do certain things, right? We can't fix traffic tickets. Like anytime somebody ever says, hey, I got a traffic ticket. No, that's traffic court. That's between you and the police. I don't get involved in that kind of stuff. It's not our responsibility to get involved in those things. But, if there's certain things that we can point people in the right direction, and then try to find a way to get to yes for some of this stuff. And I think that we've noticed that I think communication goes a long way, especially when in the past the city hasn't been really responsive to communicating very well from the administrative perspective. So I think that, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So one of the decisions I think that people were a little bit unsure of was our decision on a new city manager, right, Mike?
Well, I mean, that was right. That in 23, right after we took over, that was our big first fight, I guess, with the previous council or whatever it was. I mean, it wasn't a fun time. It probably wasn't a fun time for our fellow councilmen. I think that was the thing that were already on there. We had some differing opinions, differing just kind of thought process and experiences. And, I think that's one of the things where, if we continue down this fun post, talks about a new city manager will not be able to set the ship on the right course, even if we can get anybody to come here. So I think that little quote didn't really, what's the word? Didn't really make sense. No, that's not the word I was looking for. Age well. Didn't age well. Right. That's what I was trying to say. This quote didn't age well. And I think more of that came from just, frustration with change by certain people that don't want it to change, because it's almost sort of dismantling kind of what happened in the past.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things that I think we've focused on is changing the culture within our community, because having this mentality that why would anybody want to visit our town is not the mentality we should be having. Everybody should be proud of our town and want to share it with other people and be welcoming and hospitable. But unfortunately, yes, a new city manager does play a role in that, whether you like it or not. And I think it's been a beneficial change for our community, and I'm excited about the progress we've made and the progress that we are still talking about and will come in years in the future. And so, yeah, when people got all up in the air about a new city manager and that change, it was a tough change. It was very tough, and none of us enjoyed doing it, right? However, looking at the longevity of our city, it was the best move for us.
I agree. I think that's totally true. So I think it also, they continue to say that it's time for the citizens to stand up and take our city back. These are from people that were in charge the last 6 years. So I would say that the people stood back and, at least for now, wanted a different direction, to take the city back from the direction we were going. And not saying that 2 years we fixed all the problems, but I think we're headed in that sort of right direction over the next few years. At least to give us some more time before we have any more elections.
I think
Get that consistency and sort of a focus and direction that it's lacked the last bit of time.
But okay, let's talk about, in order to get a quality city manager here, right? We did not have a good reputation. Like, no,
Right.
There weren't a lot of people interested in coming to Durant with the way we had treated our city managers for the past decade. And so we really had to step up our game on recruiting and what we were going to offer. And that included a salary. And so when we had a candidate that we were ready to offer the job to, we needed to make sure that there was no reason for this person to turn us down, right? And I remember one of the comments in discussion was, well, generally speaking, your city manager should make, and this is just, ballpark, about the same as what your superintendent makes. And we all just looked at each other and we were like, well, I'm not sure if we can get anywhere near that, because our superintendent does well. Our school system's budget is nearly twice of what our city budget is. And so the thought of offering a salary for our city manager of what our school district that has almost twice our budget offers was just mind-boggling. And so we all sat down and we said, what is the best we can offer? Can we put our best foot forward? And knowing that, yes, we have a lot of things going on and our budget is tight, but knowing that it wasn't going to get better, like it wasn't going to grow if we didn't invest in somebody who had the experience, who had the tenure, who had the knowledge to actually bring our city forward.
Right. No, and I think you're right about that. And that, it's not a job that a lot of people like doing. It's not a job that in the past may have been more competitive, but there's not a desire as much anymore to work in municipal government. It's not a sexy type of government type job. You can do better in the private sector. You can do better other places. And then, there's a political aspect to city management that you didn't have to, was a little bit less easy. It was easier to deal with in the past, where you didn't have all social media and all this connectivity. So you were kind of anonymous. Very few people knew who your city manager was, 20 years ago. But now it's becoming a thing where you're in the news a lot more. And so you have to be okay with that. And I think one of the things that, we looked for is competency, right? So one of the things we didn't have, consistency and competency the last decade almost. So we needed a person that can bring that, and that requires, more money, like you said. But it also requires, a commitment, right? A commitment from the council to support this person, a commitment from the council to set a vision and an agenda, and him or her to carry it out, right? That's one of the things we didn't have the last, 4 to 6 years, was a direction. It was always a sort of conspiratorial type thing, rather than a hey, we're focusing on the problems of the community. It was always more of, well, these people are doing us wrong and these people are doing us wrong. And they were probably more reluctant to do any kind of partnerships with anybody, as opposed to trying to move the city forward in the light of all this growth and development that seems to be headed our way and is already here. Because as you know, the streets are a lot busier than 15 years ago when I moved here, and how long you've been here as well. So,
yeah.
So I agree with you.
What most people don't realize is every time there's a council election, that city manager is sitting on the edge of their seat, because any change in the council is putting their job a little bit at risk, right? And that's what we had faced in the past was every time the council changed, they would come in and they'd go, well, we don't like the city manager, and they'd boot them. And so with this council election kind of wrapped up and we know things are staying steady, it also allows our city manager to breathe easy, knowing that they can move forward in the plans that they have set so far, and gives them a few more years of rest, right? To prove themselves and to make sure that we're actually carrying out plans and not just constantly getting interrupted.
Sure. And I also think, the city manager, when we hired Pam, I mean, she has all the credentials, right? Pam Polk is our city manager, for y'all that don't know, and she has all the credentials and experience as far as knowledge and managing cities. She's been over 20 years in the same place prior to being here, and she has a lot of accolades from throughout the state. So we did have some luck as well, because she also has, because sometimes you need some luck in life. It's not just setting the direction, like you said. Sometimes if you have a bad reputation, sometimes you need a good direction and luck. But we did have some luck, because she did want to return here because she does have family connections. So that was helpful to us as well. But without setting the direction, I don't think she would have jumped at the opportunity to jump into a job that requires fixing the culture, setting the direction in a different direction, kind of a fixer-upper type of deal, where over in Collinsville, where she was at, she had been able to do that over 20 years. If you talk to her, when she first started at Collinsville, similar issues they had here that she had to fix. So she's been through it, and she knows what to look for, and she knows the ins and outs of city government and how you deal with people and develop relationships. She also has a deep bench of relationships throughout the state. So that can only help Durant, because like you say, we have a bad reputation throughout the state of not governing ourselves well and not pointing ourselves in a good direction. So I think that'll help change that as well. But like I said, we do have some luck involved in that. But hey, you know what? We got to take those breaks when you get them.
That's right. Well, and we're thankful to have her here with us now, because we're getting recognition even from the state at this point in time at the amount of commerce we have coming through our region, because we are located on a major highway that comes straight up from the Dallas Metroplex, and it goes all the way up to north to Tulsa. So we are getting a lot of traffic between those two large metropolitan areas. And with that, the state is looking at us going, we see the growth, but we also see the potential, and they want to invest in us. And so we're trying to figure out how to leverage that. But one of the ways we have started that process is we actually, this last year, passed a 50-cent tax for infrastructure. And what happened was this tax was already in place and utilized for other things, and it was falling off. And we took the opportunity to say, hey, like, instead of falling off, let's just repurpose it for city infrastructure. And so that was a huge win for our city to start putting some money aside for some of these projects that we knew we needed to tackle so that we could garner some of this commerce. Right, Mike?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So when we first came in, we had an interim city manager after we let the previous one go. And he suggested that and we had discussed this in the past. This had been a discussion previously with previous council, even though a lot of them were not supportive of our half-cent extension, even though they would have half-cent extension themselves if they were in. But that's okay. I get that. That's politics. Yeah, so we did pass that in February. I think it was in February 13th, looks like, something like that, with let's see, what did we get? For 20 years, half-cent sales tax for infrastructure. And we passed it with, looks like, I can't remember, 69, 70% voting affirmative. So we took the expiring sales tax that was going towards the sports complex in Southeastern Arena and going towards infrastructure. And as we go forward, that's going to be a big deal as we talk about this year, water projects, Main Street, streets, roads, sewer, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be, that's a down payment toward improving our town, at least from a infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah, what most people don't realize is we have some very big projects ahead of us, right? Like we're talking about how do we continue to build houses to meet demand of people moving to the area? How do we correct our roads? But with our roads, we have to correct the drainage so that they're not just washed away. We also have a lot of pipes throughout our city that are 100 years old that need to be replaced. You know, the list goes on and on of things that we would love to address that this starts to let us chip away at, right? So Main Street is a big project that we are discussing currently as a council, and what that looks like and how we're going to afford it and what that process is, because it's not just, okay, what are we going to do? It's how are we going to fund this? Because even this half cent is not going to cover it. And so we've got to figure out ways to improve our city, because I mean, honestly, the hope here is you correct some of these issues, but it allows people to move through your city better, which allows that tourism also to come through and makes it easier for them to come and spend money here, which then pays us back, right?
Sure. No, absolutely. And also, just surrounding communities, if we can get more retail and shopping, that'll, with correcting some of these issues as we move forward here, will help attract more of those businesses so that people decide to stop here, shop here, then go home instead, or stop here, then go to Texas. So we can kind of capture some of that sales tax, which the only way, unless the state government decides to change the way they fund cities, state sales tax is probably is pretty much almost everything you have to fund all these projects. So so we need as a city to be proactive, and with all this growth, that gives us an opportunity to grow in such a way where it can replenish and increase the collection so that we can work on a lot of these projects.
Yeah, so let's talk about that Main Street project, Mike. What most people don't realize is the price tag of this, right?
Yeah. Almost $34 million.
The projections right now are at $34 million. And part of that is to go towards drainage, because right now we have a major flooding issue on Main Street. And there's no reason to put in a brand new road if it's just going to get ruined and washed away because we didn't tackle the drainage issue. And when you talk about how are you going to fund $34 million, I mean, that's a huge conversation. But yet everybody can look at our Main Street and agree that it needs to be redone. The drainage has to be addressed. I mean, at the very least, but you can't really address the drainage without tearing the road up anyway.
Right. No, and that's absolutely right. So half of that is drainage, and that is doing it right, because most people don't know is almost everything drains down to Goodwill. Like it goes from like Starbucks all the way down to Goodwill, and then first down to Goodwill. So everything funnels down into one area, is how I was explained. So, and then that drains out to the creek, right, from there somehow. So you need to fix the drainage to the creek so that everything doesn't bottle down in at that area down on Main. Like you said, otherwise it backs up. It floods the area, destroys the street. We can't have that. Right now, most of the drainage is just surface drainage. So it just goes on the street, right? So it's kind of where it's at. So it would be, pipes, sewer, storm sewer, all that stuff underneath the street. So it'd be a modern drainage and street. And it's only, when you're talking $34 million, it's only from 4th Street to 16th. So you're not even doing all of Main Street.
No, this is just
the biggest. That's the one that needs the most. That one needs the most help.
Yeah.
Is that section. And then there's still like I said, there's still that area between First United Bank and 21st, some of that. But for now, I mean, the biggest section, and that's the main section. So there's really 2 phases. It's the drainage and then the street. Originally, the plan was a few years ago was to do the street, but not all the drainage. And that would have not been a good plan, even though the drainage is about the same cost as the street. We have to do both, because otherwise it's not going to last whatever 20, 30, 40 years, whatever we want it to last. So that wouldn't have been a good plan. The price has doubled though since they came up with this plan initially. So that's another thing we're facing. But our receipts, sales tax receipts and stuff have increased as well. So, but we're gonna have to find some creative ways to get this funded. That's just not through the sales tax. So
right, 100%. And what most people would like to see is those potholes filled, right? You got
Right.
your half cent. Why aren't you filling my potholes? And we do have money already allocated in our budget for those things. A lot of times it's just a matter of reporting those things so that the city knows they're there.
Right.
B, the weather, it has to
Right.
cooperate so that those things can be filled without popping right out. And just that communication that needs to happen between our citizens and our municipality.
Sure.
That's something that in the past has been broken, has not worked really well, but we're trying to encourage people that we are trying to do the right thing. We are trying
to come
to,
up with some new ways we've kind of been working on some ideas to kind of improve that communication.
but we want to get those things filled, but that half cent has to stretch so far and cover so many things that, this is just one project. We have other projects that cost equally as much that we're trying to figure out how do we do these things, because when you look at them, you go, oh, that's just a drop in the bucket. Like there's still so many more things that need to be done. And we're going, oh, I know I could give you $100 million worth of things that need to be done, and you'd still think it wasn't enough. And we're trying to figure out what comes first and how are we going to make a plan to get it all done and afford it all. So we're working on it, but just know that half cent is not enough to cover it all. And we are having to be very strategic and creative about how we are coming up with funding for these. So infrastructure, it is a beast and we are trying, but this is an old city and it has been neglected for far too long.
Literally everybody that I've talked to said everything in Oklahoma is old and we need to rebuild it. So that's really kind of where we're headed in that direction. But, obviously not everything can be fixed.
Yeah, we are struggling to get it all squared away and fixed.
What we need to, and what we didn't do is, have a plan and put it into action. I think we're finally starting to get to that point where we're doing that. I think a lot of it, though, was digging out from the past and the past mismanagement and misdirections that we have had. And I think that's when we go back to city manager that's has competency and experience. I think with her in there doing that this last year, I think it's helped, but it's a slow process, unfortunately. So, but I think we're heading the right direction. Like I said, we're trying to put those. Looks like things are starting to move a lot faster now. It's taken her a little while to get, put the fires out. Now we can start to rebuild the ashes from there. I think as we set some longer term plans in motion, because it's important to do the long term planning, which we hadn't done. So.
Yeah, well, I hadn't followed through on really, but you're right. Well, we're here now and we're putting boots to the ground. So I think this has been a good discussion, just giving our audience a little bit of an idea of like the hassle we see from the background. And then on the flip side, kind of the progress we're making. And so it has been a journey these last 2 years. And now we get to look at the next 2 years and what we're going to start working and accomplishing before another round of city council elections.
So what would you like to see, since you've got another 4, right? So we'll overlap some. What would you like to see happen over the next, in your technically first full term, but you're going on, it'll be 6 years. You'll be there a long time by the time this is done.
It will be. I mean, there's a lot you would think could be done, but as we're having these conversations,
you'll be teaching that municipal class we had to take with all your knowledge by the time you're done here.
Probably not, but thanks, Mike. Okay. Everything we've talked about, it's so funny how everything's like, well, this takes time. It takes time. And, you hear that and you get frustrated with it, but then you start sitting down and having the conversations with the people and you start understanding why it takes as long as it does. And you start going, okay, well, if that's the case, how do we take step 1? And so even though there's a lot of things we're working on right now, like I'm even looking at some of them going, man, I just hope that's done or even started by the time I'm leaving office, because we have some big projects, whether it's with the, Department of Transportation and our highways, or whether it's with commerce and bringing retailers in. I'm looking at all these things going, oh, I'm so happy that I'm a part of this and we're being proactive and we're making positive change. But it's crazy how some of these projects, like they're like, we won't even be able to start these for 6 or 8 years. And I'm going, but all I can do is be thankful that I have a hand in the process of bringing them here and getting that process going and started, so that in 10 years, Durant is in a different place. Whether I'm still on council then or not, doesn't matter. But knowing that we have turned the ship that direction is really.
And I
the
think you're
goal.
right about that. I think it's sometimes it's hard to think about the long term because you're always thinking in the short term, and most people are thinking, hey, why aren't all the streets fixed, or aren't all those things happening right away? And it's hard though, right? So things do run slow, but there's just so much, and there's a limit as what we can do. But as long as we can put it in the right direction over time, nothing. Just like the state, just like the country, it's always a work in progress, right? It's a dynamic situation. It never stops. It's never fixed completely. It can always be improved upon. So I think that's important to realize that as we go forward, because we've had too much short-sightedness the last bit of time. So I think that's a good outlook on it, is to say, hey, no, maybe in 15 years nobody remembers Lauren Fuller or Mike Cimolusco were on council, but hey, these new developments and these new things that had come through, part of it, we had a hand in it at some point because we laid the groundwork for it. So, and I think that's a really important message for the community to understand as we go forward here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike, it has been great. This has been another, I think, wonderful update for our audience. And we've got more in the works coming up. Hopefully some more special guests that we'll bring on for our next episode. But I think we've done well. So let's wrap this up and let's see everybody next time.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys for listening, and catch our podcast on YouTube if you want to see our faces, our smiling faces. And if you just want to listen to us, Apple Podcast for now. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out to us. Send us a message on our Facebook site, or text us if you have our phone numbers, or send us an email at municipalsorfoes@gmail.com. Or you can even make comments or leave comments in the, I think you can do it in the YouTube. I'm not sure if you can in the Apple Podcast, but you can try. And then we'll kind of go from there. But we appreciate y'all listening. Any final thoughts?
I think that's a good word to end on. We are always wanting to talk about what you guys want to hear. So please let us know what it is that you're interested in, and we are happy to broach the topic for you.
All right. Hopefully we'll have a guest next time, and then we'll see you then.
Okay. Bye, you guys.
Bye.